Well, thank you, Ben. Thank you, everyone. Please do be seated. And if you can keep your Bibles open in that passage that we read, 1 Peter chapter 1, page 1217, that would be a great help. I want to encourage you, if you didn't hear last week's message, that was, I suppose, by way of introduction, and we were speaking about verse 6 in particular. We were thinking about the whole subject of Christians having hope, and if you didn't hear that, it would be great if you could get a copy of that. I'm not going to recap over what we said. What we did note last week was that verse 6 was an amazing verse because there was a great paradox there in that Peter speaks about joy and pain at the same time. And that was really our theme last week. How is it possible to know real joy even in the midst of great difficulties? And only the gospel can make that possible. And so I want to encourage you to think about that. Today we're going to look at verse 8. And here it is on the screen as well. And this is another surprising verse where Peter speaks about people. He's writing to people and saying to them that they love Jesus even though they haven't seen him and currently don't see him. And he talks about how this faith and love in Jesus leads to a joy that is really indescribable. And actually, there's a theme of joy running all the way through these early verses in 1 Peter. We were thinking last week about verse 6, as we said, where he talks about, "In this you greatly rejoice." And then when he gets to verse 8, he talks about this inexpressible and glorious joy. So there's a theme here of joy. One of the commentators that I was reading was reminding me, we've been looking at this in our growth groups, of Luke chapter 15, where you'll know there that Jesus tells a number of stories. The one that we've been particularly looking at is the story of the prodigal son. But in every one of those stories, there's something that's lost, and someone goes out to find what's lost. And when they find the lost thing, in the first story, it's a lost sheep. Then there's a woman who loses a coin. And in the last story, it's about two sons who are both lost in different ways, as we've been thinking about in our growth groups. But when the person finds what is lost, how do they feel? What's the note in that chapter? They call their neighbours and have a party. Every one of them, when they find what was lost, they're overjoyed. And there's a note there. This is really about salvation, isn't it? What was lost being found again. And the whole subject of joy. Jesus said in that chapter, there is rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents. It's salvation he's talking about. And that's what Peter's talking about here. He's talking about the joy of knowing God because of what Jesus has done for us. Those who are lost being found and brought into a relationship with God. And that is a joy that isn't dependent on circumstances. Happiness depends on circumstances. But joy is something far deeper and more solid and lasting. And that's why Peter here, I'm going to keep saying Peter here can speak about joy and pain in the same sentence. And we're going to think about this idea of faith and love and joy. Let me begin by showing you a t-shirt I came across this week. This is what it says on the t-shirt. Words are but wind, but seeing is believing. Have you ever heard that phrase? Seeing is believing. Maybe the first bit you haven't heard, but we've all heard that phrase, haven't we? Seeing is believing. I want to ask you this morning, do you think that that's true? Because in this verse, these people had not seen, and yet they believed. But this is a very common thing that we hear people say, isn't it? Seeing is believing. I want to try and unpick this with you. I think there are two different groups of people who would understand this statement, seeing is believing, differently. And the first group is a group that we might say are sympathetic to the view that faith is a desirable thing. And I think that this statement, seeing is believing, can be a big problem to people who really see faith as a desirable thing. I talk to a lot of people, and sometimes people say to me, I'd love to believe. I want to believe. I just don't know how to get hold of what it is that I need to get hold of. I don't know. How can I get hold of Jesus? Other people seem to get it, and I can see that there's a value in this. In fact, I would say I understand these things in my head, and I feel quite envious of people who seem to have such a strong faith, but I don't know how to get hold of Jesus. He lived 2,000 years ago, and he lived very far away from where I live. I wish I could have heard him speak. I wish I could have heard him tell those teachings and parables. I wish I could have been there on the hillside above Galilee and hear it with my own ears. I wish I could have seen some of the things that he did. If I could have been there in those crowds and seen the way he healed people who were sick, the way he opened the eyes of people who'd been born blind, the way that he called to a man who'd been in a tomb for 3 or 4 days and said, Lazarus, come out. If I'd been there and seen these things with my own eyes and heard them with my own ears, I would have immediately knelt down in front of Jesus and said, Lord, I believe. I wish I could have seen these things. For some people, I think it can be a matter of feelings. Some people that I talk to, maybe you can identify with this. I understand all about Jesus, and I can appreciate all the things that you've been telling me about how Jesus came and died. The problem is, I don't feel anything. I don't feel something. What does it need for me to be a Christian? Do I need to feel some sort of warm glow? Will God strike me with some sort of lightning bolt that'll make me like one of those Ready Brek characters, and there'll be kind of a ring of warmth around me? I understand it in my head, but I'm waiting for something to zap me. I don't feel anything. And that can be a real issue. I wish I could. But so far that's not been my experience. I want to believe, but something's missing. So that's one group. Seeing is believing. There's one group where faith is a desirable thing, who could see this statement as a real, issue. I wish I could have seen. There's another group, though, who think faith is absolutely useless. And this statement, seeing is believing, is one of the reasons why they think that faith should almost be banned. I think this is a large group, in our modern culture. And this is the scientific age, isn't it? There are people who will tell you, you mustn't believe anything that you can't prove scientifically. Seeing is believing. If you can't prove it scientifically, don't go anywhere near those people. Faith, it should be banned. I was reading of a student who asked his Christian teacher, or said to his Christian teacher, if you can show me God, I'll believe in him. It's the same sentiment. That's the cry of our culture, isn't it? I won't believe it until I can see it with my own eyes. We don't like to go in for myths and legends. We want hard facts and evidence. And Christianity, to some people's mind, doesn't seem to have any of that, and therefore it's only for gullible people who have kind of left their brains behind. You can't expect me to believe in Jesus, can you? In 2010? In Rotherham? You've got to be kidding. That's just for the gullible. I'm not part of that crew. Seeing is believing.